What's up, guys? Today we're going to continue our Battle Royale series. It's going to be part 3, and we are going to do our projectiles today. Now, if you haven't watched part 1 or 2, then go ahead and watch it. It's pretty nice. So let's get right into it. So, guys, well, obviously, to start off, what we're going to need is a projectile sprite. So let's just go ahead and create our projectile. And then what you're going to do is go to the player. And then if you see, you're going to get the gun, copy, and paste it down. Then it's going to be at the exact same spot as where the player's gun was. Now, you're not going to move the gun, but either you're going to just leave it in the spot and edit it just right away. And for my gun, what I'm going to do is just some simple edits. That'll make it so it'll kind of look like a bullet. And I think that's good. So, yeah, so that's my bullet. That's my bullet right there. And then you're going to name this pistol because it's a pistol bullet. And then what you're going to do is create another sprite. You're going to name it 0. Or you can name it something different, but yeah, but 0's nice. And then what you're gonna do is when I receive setup, we're gonna set up some lists. And the lists we need today is actually there's just a little bit. We need Projectile X for all sprites, and then Projectile Y for all sprites. Projectile direction for all sprites. And then we need just a few more variables. We're going to get projectile type. You don't really need this, but it's better to have it, so let's go ahead and make it. So let's get delete all of projectile direction, projectile type, and projectile X and projectile Y. And before we go on, I'm actually going to tell you guys how this will be functioned. And that is, we add where we are in our current position into projectile X and Y. Projectile type, we're going to do pistol for now because that's the only thing we have. And then projectile direction will store my current direction I'm looking at so the bullet can fly that way. So what's going to happen is we're going to add our data to the list. This thing is going to check if data contains anything, because after we use that data, we're going to replace it with an underscore, and if it's an underscore, we're going to delete it. So that's kind of like how it works. So we need a variable for the sprite only. We're going to name it clone ID, like that, for the sprite only. And we are going to set clone ID to 0 when set up, and then we're going to switch costume to 0. Now, what 0 was used for is 0 is going to be basically the master. Like, yeah, if you get it. And then I'm going to do when I receive tick. We're going to use this tick we made from, I think, episode 1. We're going to get an if-else statement, and we're going to get if equals 0. And what that is its costume name. And that's why we have to switch costume to 0 when we receive setup. And then you're going to make 2 blocks. One is going to be manage, which will manage all those data that is stored in the lists. And then bullet, which will actually be the code for the bullets that are shooting out according to the data in the lists. I think we're going to code manage first, so let's go ahead and do that. To code the manage, it's actually really simple because it's only a checking code. Like Yeah. Now, what we'll need is, go to control, get a repeat loop, and then get a minus, and then you're gonna get length of projectile X minus clone ID. And that's how you're gonna do it. You're gonna change clone ID by 1. Set, yeah, we need 2 more variables. We're gonna name it X for the spread only, Y for the spread only. And then what you're gonna do is set both of them to 0. I mean, not 0, but we're gonna set them to a value that is item projectile X for the X and projectile Y for the Y. And we're going to do item clone ID of projectile X and Y. Now, basically what clone ID is doing right now is it's basically the I1 we used in the enemy. If you don't know what that is, go check out the part 2. Yeah. Now we're going to do the same thing for the direction. We're just going to change it to point towards item clone ID of projectile direction. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to switch our costume to pistol, or what you could really do is though, item clone ID of projectile type. But here's the thing, now, when we go later on, that is going to make it difficult. But if we do this, it's going to make just a little bit less difficult. So let's just leave it like that, but if you do want to, you can do item clone ID of projectile type. But you're just going to have to code just a little bit different. Now we're going to get a repeat until not equals underscore. Now here's why. It's an underscore. Like as I said, we are going to check if these things contains a underscore, and if it does, we're going to delete it. So we're going to get this item length of projectile X of projectile X. Now basically what that'll do is when we have this projectile X list, we're going to have a bunch of items. And for example, let's say we have 9 items in. And we're going to get the item length of projectile X of projectile X. We have this projectile X list, and the length is 9. So basically it's going to select the very last one. So that's pretty nice. And we're going to repeat until we're going to delete projectile X and projectile Y, and then everything else. But before we do that, let's get length of projectile X and length of projectile X, and let's just duplicate that, change these to projectile direction and projectile type. Now basically what that'll do is it's gonna delete these last ones you see. It's gonna delete the 5th one, the 4th one, the 3rd one, the 2nd one, and the 1st one, and it's gonna delete it like that. And then when we do, we just have to remember that we have to change our clone ID by -1 because we changed it by 1 right here. Now what you're going to do is hide because we don't want our thing to show when doing it. And I just remembered that you guys have to do a screen refresh for both of these. And let's move on. Now, for the bullet, it's actually a little bit confusing, and what we're going to do for the bullet is we're going to do something that is called a framework, and how that's going to work is a bullet is going to fly for a certain frame. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to get change frame by 1 because we want to do our framework. And then we're going to come back to here and we're going to do set frame to 0 and then create clone of myself. And then here's the thing you really have to remember. You have to get switch costume to 0 or else the manager is going to run once and never again. Because manage will only run if the costume name is equal to 0. But if we just leave it like this, it's going to be pistol. So you just have to remember to switch it back. So let's do that, and let's say change frame by 1. And here's the thing, when we shoot our bullet, what if it kind of flies in this direction and we don't know what the value is going to be? But we do know this 90 degrees because we only have to change one position. But if it's diagonal like this, it's really confusing. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some math and get change x by and change y by. And then what you're going to do is get a times for both of these. And in the first of those, you're going to input the speed of the bullet. And mine is going to be 15 because it's pretty nice as 15. And then for the y, what you're going to do is cos of direction. Clones have their own direction, obviously, so you can do that. And then for the x, what you could do is cosine of direction. Or maybe the opposite, like, yeah, that's sine, and that's cosine. That is opposite. But it doesn't matter, like, yeah. So let's get replace item projectile x with a rounded x. Because here's the thing, we don't want to get crazy decimals in our list. It's gonna go crazy like it is. And then what you're gonna do for that is you're gonna put clone ID. The next thing you're gonna do is go to motion, get a go to block, get a minus and another minus, and then go to verbal, get an x minus scroll x. So these are the basic ones, the normal scrolling thing. And then we are going to show. And then what you're gonna do is get if statement. And here's the hard part. Now what the hard part is going to be about is the hit detection in a scrolling game. Now obviously this is not easy. Now before we move on, we do need some new variables. Let's go ahead and make that. Now the first one is going to be player hit for all sprites. Second one is going to be a list. We're going to do enemy hit. Reason why enemy hit is a list is because we use clones for our enemy, and it's going to be real confusing when we use a global variable. And we can't use a for the sprite only variable because it's not going to share between these two sprites. But now that we have this list, we can make a for the sprite only variable in the enemy, and we're going to name that underscore hit. So now let's just go back to our projectile and start coding our if. Now we're first going to design our or statement to delete an actual clone. So we're going to do greater than length of projectile x, and clone ID is greater than length of projectile x, or it's equaled to an underscore. And what that is going to be is item projectile x, clone ID of projectile x is equal to underscore, then it's going to delete its clone. Reason why we have the second one is, as I told you, we're going to use this underscore detection to delete the data in the list. So yeah, that's how it should work. And let's do it. So or equal to and less than, and then we need the framework being done. So if frame is greater than 30, then what we're going to do is we're going to replace item projectile x, projectile y, projectile whatever. We're going to have those. So projectile y and projectile x, projectile direction, and we're gonna replace it with an underscore for every one of those. So now when we do that, it'll fit the conditions with this, and it'll obviously delete it now. So let's just get that clone ID for every one of those, and then let's go ahead and put that in here. Now for the second one, what you're gonna do is if my x is equal to underscore, then we're gonna do that. Now how that happens is with the hit detection. And for the hit detection, we're going to do the player's hit detection first because they're similar to both of them. And then what we're going to do is a and, not, and then we're going to do contains, and then we're going to do 10. And for the first thing, we're going to do item projectile type item clone ID of projectile type contains 10, and another and then another equal. If equals 0, player hit. So if player's not hit, we're gonna hit him. But if player's already hit, then we're gonna wait until he's not hit again and hit him again. Now this is where the math comes in. We're gonna go to operation, the absolute value of minus x and player x. Now that's gonna get the difference between those two. Now we need less than. If abs of x minus player x is less than 20, now what abs do is it's an absolute value, which will always make this number into a positive version of it. So for example, if it were to be something like -20, it'll make it 20, and if it was 30, it'll stay as 30 because it's already positive. And that's actually it. Now that is still pretty long, but that's it. And then what you're going to do is set player hit to something like 30, 25, like a little bigger number than player hit equals 0, like not 0. We're going to set our x to an underscore, and that is where now the another conditions are met here. We run that, the conditions are met here, and it's going to obviously delete it now. Now, to do the enemy hit detection, we need a variable. We're going to name it I1. Right there. We're going to select for the spread only. And then set I1 to 0 here. Now, why we need I1 is actually a little bit simple, and you guys should know it if you have been watching this tutorial series for the whole time. And that is because we have to check everything in the enemies list, which will mean that we are checking every enemy's hit. You're going to get a repeat length of enemy X. You're going to put it there like that. And then we are going to change I1 by 1. And then we're going to go to control, get an if statement. And then we're going to copy this in. And then what we're going to do is take this out, go to variables, get an item, I1 of enemy hit is equal to 0. We're going to do that. And for this thing, we're going to keep this the same, but we're going to do plus 10 from the I1. Now, basically what these last two codes are doing is it's going to make that so the player and the enemies aren't going to get hit by their own bullet, which is a good thing to have. Now we're going to duplicate this because it's really just the same, but it has to be enemy X. And we're going to replace our player X and player Y with item I1 of enemy Y and item I1 of enemy X. Now, inside there, what you're going to do is literally the same thing as that. We're going to change, we're going to replace item I1 of enemy hit with 30. And then what you're going to do is go ahead and set our X to 0. I mean an underscore, so that it'll meet this condition and whatever is on. And then from now on, we should not be able to shoot yet, because we didn't code the player to shoot. Now, I think we should move on so the player can shoot now. And we're actually going to do it in here. Now, for the player to shoot, we're going to get an if statement. And then we're going to get an and, a greater than. We're going to input 0.1 in there. Now, that is going to be your shooting delay, so you guys can choose your own value. 0.1 is really nice when you're using this system. And let's go to sensing, get a mouse down, or key spaces pressed. Now, those are the two keys I usually input for the shootings, and you can obviously choose your own, I guess. And then we're going to make for the sprite only variable, we're going to name it shoot delay. Now, if you're asking me why I'm not using this timer, is because timer is really, really useful, and you should use it in something else. You can't waste just timer in this thing. Like it's so useful, and you shouldn't waste it. And you can do that. Using timer, you can make when stop sign is clicked. And using timer, you can do lots of things. And I can't remember them because I'm not good at remembering things. And we actually gotta go fast now because we're running out of time. So let's get that projectile XY direction type. And let's input that, go to motion, get a direction. And for the type, what you're gonna do is input 10. And then we're gonna do player X and player Y for the projectile X and projectile Y. And boom, that is it. But for the code to actually run, we need to go to when I receive setup, repeat until, wait 0.1 second, and we're going to change shoot delay by 0.1. And then when I receive setup, we're going to set shoot delay to 0. And then, oh yeah, for the gun delay to actually work, we have to input set shoot delay to 0 after we shoot. Now if we run, we should be able to shoot like that. But if you see now, enemies aren't getting hit by it. So let's go ahead and make the enemy's hit detection. And if you thought we already made it by using this, we didn't actually input any codes to the enemy, but we did to the bullet. So let's go ahead and input our codes to the enemy. And in the last episode, someone was having some trouble with its thing, and they said that the AIs are just rushing towards this left bottom corner. Now, when I was actually making this project to show you guys, I actually had the same problem, and my problem was in here. So you should check it good. It has to be in this order for it to work properly. Now, the order really doesn't matter, but the inputs really, really matter. Because if this was enemy X, it'd go crazy like that. So it has to be enemy Y. So now what we're going to do is make that hit detection. And for the hit detection, you need a if-else statement. And we're going to do if hit is greater than 0. Now, for that to work, you can go here, and what you're going to do is set hit to 0. And then go to variables and add 0 to enemy hit. And then we're going to delete all of enemy hit at the start of the game. And then let's go back to our enemy movement script, which I can't locate right now. Oh, here it is. Now, for what you're going to do is, you're going to go to looks, get it set, brightness effect to -30. You're going to put that here. Go to control, get an if-else statement. If equaled to 7, hit is equal to 7. We're going to set hit to 0. Now basically what that'll do is this enemy is going to be invincible for 7 frames when it gets hit, because the bullet is going to go through the enemy, detect that it's touching, and it should be deleted, but obviously there's this thing called reading speed, and yeah, it takes time. So and it's like, you know what I mean. So let's do that, and let's go ahead and set brightness effect to 0, and then we're going to do control if this thing, so greater than 0, item clone ID of enemy hit. If item clone ID of enemy hit is greater than 0, then what we're going to do is replace item clone ID of enemy hit with 0. And then we are going to set hit to 1. That's it for the hit detection. Now we have to make the enemy to actually shoot. And that's one of the most simplest thing you can do, but hard when you try to do it hard. Let's do pick random 1 to 25 equals 1. And then we're going to go to player. We're going to duplicate this, drag that into the enemy, delete that. When we go to enemy, now what we're going to have is this code, and you're going to bring it down to here. You're going to put that in. You're going to change this to enemy X, enemy Y, and you are going to do direction. And then for the type, you're going to do +10 and the clone ID. Boom. That's pretty nice. So if we now run, the enemies will also shoot. And if they get hit, they'll darken like that. And that's it. Now the player also has the, player doesn't have its hit detection yet. So let's go ahead and make that quickly, because we're actually running out of time now. Like, we were, but we are too now. Like, we're still running out of time. So if player hit is greater than 0, then what we're gonna do is if else. We do need an if else, and in deluxe, set brightness effect to 0. Set brightness effect to -30. Now, here's the thing. Player doesn't use his clone to do things, so we have to use a different way. Now, if player hit is greater than 7, we're going to set player hit to 1. And then in the else, we're going to code just a little bit more, another if else statement, an equal sign. If player hit is equal to 7, we're going to set our player hit to 0. And then we're going to change player hit by 1 if not. Now that's the hit detection for the player, and we gotta go up to here, and then we can set player hit to 0 at the start. Now if we run, you see our player shooting, and you see them getting hit by our bullet, and you see the player getting hit by the AIs. Hello? Shoot me, please. Yeah, you saw that? There you go again. And there it is. That's how to make this projectiles. It could update just a little bit late. That's because of the Scratch FPS. Scratch usually runs around 30 FPS, so 30 frames per second, and I can't really get any better. In the next episode, I might be back with the collectibles, or I might be back with the on-screen and off-screen detection show height, which is one of the easiest things you can do and one of the most important things you have to do in scrolling games. And peace.